We all had an early vision of what our lives would look like, and then life actually happened. From marriage to motherhood, career dreams, and everything in between, this is Life Actually with Mary Belle.
Welcome back to Life Actually with Mary Belle. I am Mary Belle, and we ended our last episode. It was one of my favorite episodes, actually, nostalgia throwback. And it segued nicely into, have our parents always been gatekeepers of how difficult adulting is? Or is there just this sort of responsibility that you have not to just spew negativity to your children or just to people in general as you go through stages of life? So that is what we'll be talking about here as far as the hardships of as we've aged, the things we've come in contact with, the stuff that people that we know around us have sort of dealt with. And where is that fine line between being positive versus negative, warning people of things to come without just being a negative Nancy about it? So that's where we are. I went to a bridal shower, one of my cousin's bridal showers, and her sister, who's already married and just had a baby about a year ago. I said, "How's the baby?" And they live on the West Coast, so I haven't seen them in a while. She's like, "How's the baby?" She goes, "Baby's great, but like, why did you guys never tell us how hard it was?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Nobody told me how hard this was going to be. It's like we look and you guys all have kids and everything seems like great. And like nobody said how hard it was going to be." And my heart sank a little bit because it's just not in my nature. Like if somebody's going to a bridal shower or somebody's getting married or somebody's about to have a kid, I sort of pride myself on like, all right, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh God, are you sure you want to have a kid? Are you sure you want to get married? The shit's really hard. What does that do for anybody? Like I don't live my daily life like that. I actually try to be a whole lot more of a positive Paula. But the more that I was thinking about that and the more that I've talked about things that have been, just difficult as you age and you get older, and a lot of the nostalgia episode throwback reminded me, and I'm sure all of us, of like the times that were just so much easier. And like our parents, and I'm sure there's varying levels of parents. I am sure there are plenty of parents who are like, "You sure you want to do that? Oh my God, you're going to get married? You're going to do this?" Because their experiences were not good ones, right? So this isn't, it's not all encompassing that every set of parents does the same thing. But I know a large majority, my parents were the same way. They've been very supportive as things get difficult, whether it was marriage related, parenting, career, health. They're always supportive of everything for me in particular and my husband. But when I ask my mom, like, what was it really this hard for you too? And she usually says like, my mom's not a negative person to begin with, so she doesn't live in this negative headspace of, "Oh yeah, it really, stunk back in the day." She'll never do that. But she'll sit there and she'll like actually have to think about it, and she'll be like, yeah, it was hard. Like, we didn't have a lot of money and we didn't have a lot of space to live. Like they had a little small apartment and, we had whatever, like they struggled in their own ways of struggling. But it sort of just sounds like it was their journey. And like my parents are not complainers either. So like you're not going to get them complaining about stuff. And I think a lot of parents, especially, you could say what you want about the boomer generation, like they did what they had to in order to survive and move forward. And I love that about them, even though a lot of people sort of like, "Oh yeah, it's the boomer mentality. Whether you're happy in your job or not, you just stay there. If you're happy in your marriage or not, you just stay there. And you don't ever do anything to change it because that's just what you do." A lot of people have problems with that. But from a positive side of that, like that's what they did. They like stuck things out and they don't really have a ton of complaints about it. Although I do think as years progress, you sort of lose the filters that you used to have. So your true feelings on things sort of like come to the surface. I've learned that as my parents, my friends' parents, all different relatives have aged and stuff like that. But I think the thing that's really important here is like, what is the fine line between, I don't know if you want to use the word warning, but warning people about certain things that are to come or things to consider or, anything that sort of sounds a little bit negative when somebody is going to the next stage of their life without sounding like you're just so like meh about stuff, like, and like I said, I don't like that. And a good example of that is I really have a hard time with just wait people. And if you don't know what a just wait person is, it is if you are telling somebody like, oh my God, I'm having a really hard time potty training my kid, and they're like, huh, just wait until they're, I don't know, it could be anything. Wait until they get into school and they're dealing with bullies or something. I mean, that helps me not at all. That doesn't help me at all with my potty training issues. Like, that's completely unrelated to the experience that I'm experiencing. It doesn't help me at all. Or people who are like, wow, this newborn stage is really difficult. And somebody's like, just wait until they're a toddler and they're running around. Like, you could dissect that and be like, all right, she's warning me of things to come. But I think it's probably, I'm figuring this out as I'm talking about it. And as I say, without anything, how you communicate something is how the message is delivered. There is a way to say that to somebody so that they feel a little bit more seen in what they're experiencing at that time, right? So they feel like they're being heard and they feel like they're being supported for what's relative to them in the moment. So if I'm struggling with a newborn and I have not gotten more than 3 hours of sleep at a time for the last 4 months, and I'm like at my wit's end, and I'm like, oh my God, this newborn, I don't even know how to operate my brain anymore. And somebody says to me, oh, wait till they're walking around and climbing on furniture. Like, bro, that does not help me in the least get through this lack of sleep that I'm experiencing with a newborn. As opposed to somebody who's in the toddler stage where their kid climbs on everything and no, don't do this, no, don't do that, no, don't touch the glass, no, don't do that. And I've been through these stages, so I know the pros and cons of all of them. You could say to the person who's struggling with a newborn who's not sleeping as like, oh my God, I remember when I did not get sleep either. And that is like, it's like, it crushes my soul to not sleep. For me personally, I need sleep. I needed to survive. I remember how horrible it was to not have sleep. But if I can help you at all, enjoy the time that you have with like a little baby that you can nestle in your arms, even when you could like grab and steal some sleepy nap time moments with a newborn baby who does not move. And even still to this day, like some people, like I didn't particularly love being immobile with Marina. Like I'm a sort of a get up and go kind of gal. I hated sitting there. And I've got my, I feel confident in my motherhood that I feel okay saying this. I don't love baby. I don't like sitting there with a baby. I don't. I want to be doing things. My neck hurt. I had to get a massage thing because I was like this. Like I got so tense. I ended up getting migraines because of my head being like this. And also I was a work from home mom back then too, even with a newborn. So like I was trying to type on my computer when I was doing marketing and I'm like, I don't want to I have stuff to do. Whereas, Jay would come home from work and be like, shit, yeah, I don't have to be commuting. I don't have to be going up and down 7 flights of steps to do whatever. He would gleefully sit there for hours holding our baby. And I know that there's plenty of moms too who they love that. And maybe it's their last kid that they're having. So they like can super duper embrace like, oh yeah, I'm going to get all the baby snuggles right now. Like, and I'm just going to soak them all up. Sometimes if it's your first kid, like you don't feel that. You don't sort of look at it that way, and that's okay. But it's not helpful at all for somebody to be like, oh yeah, well, wait till your kid's climbing all over everything. Cause it's not helpful as far as I'm concerned. So saying that, were our parents gatekeepers back in the day? I don't think they did it purposely, right? A lot of them, like they're just living life. They're getting their stuff done. They don't complain about a lot of stuff. And then as we've been going through stuff, like, I think people for the most part try to be just more positive. Like I get what you're going through, and maybe mentally they know like, ooh, next stage is going to be even harder. But I'm a big proponent of not saying that because even as far as aging, I've said a lot of stuff as far as I turned 40 and like my eyes, Marina will bring my phone. She's like, Mom, what's this? And I'm like, oh, I cannot. Like I'm at this age where stuff has to be an arm's length away from me for me to be able to read it. This is like I could throw up looking at it. And then my lower back, which is partially aging, partially, like I've said before, being a writer, I sit down a lot, so I have to exercise more. But there are some things that are just out of our control. When you hit 40, they just start happening. So I've shared that journey so that other people who are going through the same thing feel a little less alone. And I cannot tell you the amount of people who are like, just wait till you're 50. That does not help me. And I know it comes from a good place. And like a lot of these people I just love to death. So I'm not calling anybody out by name because there's got to be at least 15, 20 people who have said that to me. And I know you guys are basically saying it from a good place in your heart. But like I said before, there's a way to say that so that somebody gets the message without it sounding like I can't have these experiences as a new 40-year-old that are my own. So, oh my goodness, like you could say, oof, I remember when I dealt with that when I was 42 and it was hard. But focus on all these good things while you're 40 because before you know it, you'll be 50 and then these other things are going to start happening. Like that's isn't that a better way to say something like to alert somebody that like, yeah, I've been there where you've been before, but you're going to also have these things like 10 years from now. So here are the things like if I could go back to my 40-year-old self and have this conversation, like these are the things I would have focused on just to, sort of make it a little bit more enjoyable and a little less like, oh God, what are we about to get into for the next decade? What did I say here? Yes. So I think the biggest thing is like, negative versus positive, how to really hone in on a message to somebody, whether it be somebody, maybe they start working at the job that you have, it's like a fresh face. Can you imagine like getting a new employee and being like, oh, wait till the fucking shit hits the fan, with this place, like people don't know how to do this and this, like, people can just have a different experience than you. And then also, what is the fine line between having a new employee and then just completely lying to them about the culture of like the office that you're in? Because then you end up having like a best friend and they're like, why did you not warn me when I was like onboarded for this company that this place is such a shit show? And you're like, well, I really didn't like know you that well yet. I'm like, we need the help. So I didn't want to scare you away. I wanted like a new employee here to help, shoulder the load of work that there is. So I think it can be really in anything. It could be career-wise, parenting, the hardships of marriage, the, difficulties of aging and just like illnesses and everything. And I think, the main thing just to say about this is find that fine line, find that good balance between warning people of what's to come, but doing it in a way that is positive. Like put a positive spin on that because I just think people are more prone to listening to you and your advice when you add a positive spin to something. If I was sitting here and I was saying this whole time, like working from home as a mom is just, it's friggin' hard. I don't recommend it for anybody. Like that's not going to be very motivating or inspiring. And I honestly, genuinely believe it is difficult, but it's totally doable as long as you have proper support systems in place, right? So like that is a realistic answer. Here are the things that are really hard for me, right? Like being able to entertain my kid, being able to have free time to myself. I do have to get out of the house. Like I have been living for these trips down here to, I'm away from my house for the full day. I drive an hour to Claudio, well worth the drive. Thanks to all this beautiful production, the set, everything. And I'll keep shouting that to the rooftops. If you ever wanted to start a podcast or you need video content, check out Claudio, Visions at gmail.com. It's CAYI Visions at gmail.com. I'm not being paid for that. That is a genuine testimony that I just love it here. But my point in saying that is that I look forward to getting out of my house every couple weeks or once a month for a full work day. And it fills my cup so much that then I can't wait to get back home. And I'm like, all right, I've done enough peopling for today. I'm ready to be a work from home mom again. It helps me feel better about my whole situation. So if I was talking to somebody who felt the same way, yeah, relate to them. Say, yeah, I totally know how difficult that is because I've done it myself. Here are the things that help me sort of find the best parts of being a work from home mom, how to really appreciate it and how to really capitalize on all the good aspects of it. And then when the negative things start to happen, here's how I helped combat those. I just think that's a really important thing to do whenever you're talking to anybody about anything. Focus on a positive moment while you're also sort of doing like a teaching moment. And so I don't think our parents necessarily, they definitely didn't gatekeep on purpose. And I can't say that about all parents. But I think a lot of them just, they put their head down, head to the grind. They did what they had to do. And a lot of them, thankfully, for those of us who are fortunate enough to have the really good ones who are supportive to us now, I think that's their way of saying, yeah, I do know how hard this was and I'm going to be here to help support you through it. Like I don't need to hear, my mom say, yeah, this was really terrible and I didn't do this. She's just like, hey, listen, I know what you're going through and I'm here to help you. And I think that's incredible. And I love my parents very much for that. I'm going to start to cry.
Can I snap you out of the crying?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, and I know this is off script, so I apologize.
No, I love this.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And it's very much in theme to what was going on. If you had one piece of advice that you would give your younger self, I guess about life and about kind of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
what would it be? And obviously, how would you tell young Mary this one piece of advice?
Oh, but the first thing that comes to mind is that very often I always was like, what am I going to do with my life? Who am I going to marry? What am I going to do? What is my work going to look like? What is my career going to be? I always felt like I needed an answer for everything. The answer is in the journey. The answer is in all the little things that you do, whether they feel important at the time, whether they feel right at the time. When you add in all of those stones, like the stepping stones from the stages of your life, from the people you meet, the relationships you're in, the jobs that you have, all of that stuff will create what your journey is supposed to be. And it's very much a vivio memento moment. Live in the moment, enjoy where you are. And if you do not enjoy where you are, take the next steps to figure out where you're meant to be next and keep learning from all of those things. It took me 40 years to really understand that, because all the years prior, I was always like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not making enough money. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. When all of my friends around me had these esteemed careers or, things like that, I always felt sort of lost and like I wasn't on time for myself. You are right on time, whatever your journey is, so long as you are learning from what you're doing and you have a vision of where you're going, even if you don't know exactly where you're going, as long as you keep moving forward because you're learning from the things that you did in the past, that's the most important thing, not to stay stagnant. But that was a very good segue into a future episode too, because I wrote a blog, 40 things that I've learned in 40 years. And I think I might do a whole episode on that because obviously it's 40 things and we didn't talk about each one like in depth, but there's 40 things I learned in 40 years and I wrote them all down. I think that would be a good one. That was a very good question.
There was a little bit of a follow-up, but I think you kind of answered it.
All right, let me hear it.
Because I don't know, like I know I was a pretty stubborn youth, right? So do you think that you would be receptive and listen to your own advice? And this is kind of like a Back to the Future scenario, right? I don't know if you've watched the movie or not.
Oh, yeah.
But, now Mary from 2025 gets transported back to Mary in 1999 when you're maybe a high school something,
15.
right? Or maybe a little bit later when you were a high school senior and you gave yourself that advice. Would that younger Mary listen to you?
I think so. I don't know if my mother and my father would agree, but so about me and my person. So actually there's two things I thought of. There was a viral thing that went around from a poet, Janae Cecilia, I think her name is. It was to my younger self. And I actually did a reel on this. And it was all the messages that I would say if I went to, I met my younger self for coffee today. And it was like a whole thing. She was wearing this and I was wearing this. She said this and I said this. She was worried about this, but I said this. So with all those years in between, what your things were that you were concerned with back in the day versus what you would tell that younger self today. And it went viral. So many people did it. So my personality in particular, I will take in what everybody says, a variety of people, and I don't necessarily respond to it right away, but I make my own opinion then afterwards. And I'll sort of marinate in what a bunch of people's different opinions are. I would say 80% of the time I make my decision and I stick with it, but that extra 20% I'll let a few things roll around in my head, and then I will take from that and make my final decision. Sometimes I've been told that I get a little defensive or that I don't listen, whether it be from like our marriage before we had therapy and also from my parents or my brother and my sister, just like my personality in general. But I do think I do a pretty good job. Like I may have an answer for everything initially, but I will always take what somebody says to me and then sort of sleep on it and then roll with it later. So I think I would have listened to myself. Maybe not initially, but I would have marinated in it and then I would have.
I know I wouldn't have. I would have needed
I think Dave might sit here and probably say the same. Would he?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'd have to ask him.
Ask him tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think I would have had to like come up with like some kind of a way to prove to myself from the past that what I'm saying is real. like, like this is going to happen in the next 30 seconds, just so you know that I'm not messing around.
Okay.
Just to prove to you that this is not normal, that I am from the future, that I am trying to give you advice on because I would have looked at you or myself with whatever advice I gave myself. And I'd be like, yeah, okay, bro, thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
See you
What I
later.
mean? And I would have and that's kind of how I was as a youth. I wasn't really into like, I'll sit there and I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm like, all right, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Check you later. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would have had to do like, hey, listen, if you trust me, I guarantee you this year, such and such will win, and
Yeah.
you'll see I'm not lying. And then I'd be like, oh, maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe I should think about that.
Yeah. I think about that often. And even when I'm telling Marina stuff, and as she grows older, like once she gets to that age where like, a boy's going to break her heart, she thinks her whole life is going to like, implode. How do you teach somebody that your broken heart is going to be broken temporarily, and then one day you're going to look back and be like, do you remember that person that you like were so broken up about, and look at them now? And I don't mean this to be rude, like, like somebody who doesn't have a good job later on, like, oh, you were in love with this person and he ends up doing nothing with his life. Very frequently that happens. A lot of people peak in high school. But less about the other person and more about, it's exactly what you just asked me and exactly how I feel. It feels like it's horrible in that moment, but it's all part of your journey. So like, your heart is broken right now, and this was the love of my life. I know it feels like that right now, but you're going to end up meeting the actual love of your life, who's going to remind you, oh shit, this is why it never worked out with any of those other people, And I think that's a tremendous lesson that you do learn. And I really hope that I'll be able to figure out a way to make that as eloquent a conversation with my daughter, who she is pretty stubborn like me. She has all the answers for everything at 5 years old, which is astounding. But she'll do that. She'll do what I do. She'll say, no, I got it. And then she'll go in her room and then she'll come back and it'll almost be like it's her idea. She goes, Mom, I was thinking. I said, oh, what were you thinking? And she'll verbatim repeat back to me what I said to her, which I am sort of okay with. It's a little bit annoying in the moment, like when they just disagree with you to disagree with you. But hey, if you're going to do that initially, but then you're actually going to listen to what I say, you're going to marinate in it, and then you're going to come back and you're going to form your opinion based on what I sort of suggested, I am okay with that, I think it's okay.
I like it.
Yeah. So, all right. I love that little parent gate. I think my mom and dad will probably get a kick out of that. Who knows? I think the 40 things I learned in 40, I actually have it printed on my counter at home. That's going to be another one. I think I'll bring that next time when we're recording too. But this was a good one. It is a little difficult recording a lot at one time. I feel like I don't know how people do this. Like even singers in a concert, how does your throat not close up after you like use your?
Not to go back to the whole Mariah Carey thing, but that's need a little bit of tea with honey.
With the honey,
yeah.
I'm gonna bring that next time.
Soothe your vocal cords as your.
Fun fact: it's also like below freezing in here, which I love because I run hot, and he does have a space heater. So if you're worried about that, if you're gonna come here to record, but I like to stay cool. I think it also makes my brain work better. Like when I'm hot, I just want to go to sleep. So, but yeah, I think I'm gonna do the tea with honey because I could feel like it gets like. And I work from home. I don't talk unless I'm talking to my daughter. My daughter. Why did I just say like that? Daughter. So yeah. All right. I think that's great. I still gotta button up how the hell I close up my episodes. But thank you for being super involved and on the mic. I told Claudio needed him on the mic for these episodes, and here he was. So round of applause for that. Thank you guys for tuning in, and it just really means the world to me that you're here. So. We'll be back next week for another episode, of which I think we'll do another surprise. So see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share, follow the full journey on social media at the handle married.belle.books. And if you have need for audio-visual content creation and recording services, Cayi Visions is located in Stamford, Connecticut, and can also be found on Instagram at CAYI Visions.